of the Eklund Gomes Black Lives Matter series. Today's series is focusing on racism in real estate. Just to review for those of you who are joining us for the first time, it is an 8-week series. We have done, Let's Do Something About It was our first one. Black Lives Matter, a history, we put into 2 parts. After that, we talked about the human stories, that was Living While Black. Today, of course, is racism in real estate. Next week, we're going to do where we go from here. Beyond that, we're going to go on how to implement change, and then we're going to be preparing for the Black Lives Matter. Someone's on, we got to mute people, Ellis. I'm so sorry, I'm hearing a lot of feedback there. From there, we're going to go into the Black Lives Matter rally prep, and then we're going to be attending the Black Lives Matter rally in Washington, D.C. on the 28th. Today, we are going to be talking for the first half of the session a bit about, number one, the history of racism in real estate and how we got to where we are. And number two, we're going to talk about some recent news as it relates to real estate brokers and racism within the industry. And then we're going to open this up like we did last week to the roundtable discussion. So without further ado, I am going to introduce Ellis on our team, who's going to begin with a little bit of history. Ellis?
Hi, everyone, and thank you, John. Looking forward to a great roundtable today. So I'm going to start in 1712 and provide a history and then hand it off to my colleagues Susie and Janet. In 1712, New York forbids free slaves from owning property and stopping wealth. In 1865, Field Order 15 set aside 400,000 acres of confiscated Confederate land for freed slaves, land along the southeast coast of Georgia, with the goal to help the thousands of newly freed slaves. Quote, each family shall have a plot of not more than 40 acres of tillable ground. This became known as a phrase known as 40 acres and a mule. After Lincoln's assassination, Sherman's order was reversed, giving the land back to former Confederate owners. And the reversal left many African Americans with few options but to become sharecroppers, often working for former slave owners. So this is important because it was one of the biggest bait and switches in history. In 1866, Black codes, which were restrictive laws designed to limit the freedom of African Americans and ensure their ability as cheap labor force after slavery was abolished during the Civil War. It was legalized by Southern states to keep Blacks working for low wages or in debt, restricted Blacks from owning property, conducting business, buying or leasing land, and once again, stopping wealth. Next, in 1919, the Red Summer of 1919 is what it's called, a time period from late winter through early fall of 1919, during which white supremacist terrorism and racial riots took place in more than 36 cities across the US. So racially restrictive covenants expanded and property owners banned house sales to Black people. Next, in 1934, the Federal Housing Administration was created. Redlining and housing discrimination legally begins in over 200 cities. The Federal Home Loan Bank Board asked homeowners, the Homeowners Loan Corporation, to look at 239 sites and create residential security maps to indicate the level of security for real estate investments in each surveyed cities. The most desirable areas for lending purposes were outlined in green, generally affluent suburbs on the outskirts of cities, and considered type A, while type B, outlined in blue, were still considered desirable, and type C were labeled declining and outlined in yellow. Finally, type D neighborhoods were literally outlined in red, hence redlining, which we'll discuss, and were considered the most risky for mortgage support. So next, I'll hand it off to Susie and Janet.
All right, so next we have the Civil Rights Act of 1966. It was passed by Congress to prohibit discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin in public places, provided for the integration of schools and other public facilities, and made employment discrimination. It outlawed segregation in businesses such as theaters, restaurants, and hotels. This document was the most sweeping civil rights legislation since Reconstruction. This act ended the application of Jim Crow laws, which had been upheld by the Supreme Court in Ferguson, in which the court held that racial segregation purported to be separate but
So next up, just 6 days after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, Lyndon Johnson signed the Fair Housing Act of 1968, which prohibited both private and public discrimination in housing. After 349 years, Black people can finally buy a house. This was only 52 years ago. It was meant to build upon the 1964 Act and prohibited discrimination concerning the sale and financing of housing based on race, religion, national origin, and sex. In practice, housing remained segregated in many areas of the country, and there were many exemptions to this act. So for example, the so-called Mrs. Murphy provision exempted landlords who occupied apartments in buildings of fewer than 5 units from the prohibitions against discrimination. Similar exemptions applied to sellers of single-family homes and religious institutions. From 1950 to 1980, the total Black population in America's urban centers more than doubled. Meanwhile, white Americans steadily moved out of the cities into the suburbs, taking many of the employment opportunities which Black people needed into communities where they were not welcome to live. At this point, Black neighborhoods had suffered decades of disinvestment and institutional neglect, but realtors continued to charge African Americans inflated prices for inferior or substandard properties, knowing that they had nowhere else to go. Clearly, during this time period, the federal government was either powerless or unwilling to take major steps to enforce.
So we have 1988, Congress passed the Fair Housing Amendments Act, which significantly expanded the law to based on disability or on familial status. Can everybody hear me? I'm hearing some feedback.
Yeah, maybe distance yourself from your phone a bit.
Okay. This amendment brought the enforcement of the Fair Housing Act under the control of the U.S. Department of Housing and Development. Under this act, the HUD was supposed to make its reasonable cause determination within 100 days. However, over the following years, HUD fell into the common practice of frequently dismissing or settling claims, finding no cause. Allegations of racial discrimination form the single largest group of complaints filed, which being less likely to receive reasonable cause charges as compared with the next two largest category of complaints, those based upon familial status and disability.
So jumping forward a couple of decades now, the 2008 financial crisis was possibly the start sign of the failure of the Fair Housing Act to fulfill its mandate. It wiped away a decade's worth of hard-won financial gains for the Black community and stole their homes. Housing discrimination, predatory lending against Blacks, Asians, Hispanics continued during the global recession. As the housing bubble was peaking, African Americans were 50% more likely than their white peers to receive a subprime loan, which had more expensive terms, carrying higher interest rates, and increasing the probability of their failure. In 2010, almost 500,000 Black homeowners were at risk of foreclosure, and by 2014, more than 240,000 had lost their homes due to the financial crisis. The historic collapse in Black homeownership is an important part of why the wealth gap between Black and white Americans is larger today than it has been in decades. In 2007, before the crash, the median white family had 8 times the wealth of the median Black family. By 2030, it rose to 11 times. And now, so today, the Black household average net worth is 140,000, while the white family is 7 times greater, due in large part to devalued housing, mortgage discrimination, and restrictive covenants through the 20th century.
In 2010, Wells Fargo was exposed for restricting as loans, aka subprime lending to Black, quote unquote, mud people, as they described it, the bank employees. That's what they refer to, borrowers. Blacks face highest home loan denial rates at 25%, 10% for whites. 2017 to 2020, redlining is still affecting Black. COVID-19 disproportionately affecting Black people due in part to poor redlining conditions as well as minimal access to health. So before we jump into the current press, which John and the rest of the panelists will discuss, we just want to give you a few important definitions. So, described as refusing a loan or mortgage to someone because the living believed to be poor financial risk. Susie?
Next, steering is when an agent limits the housing options available to a buyer by directing prospective home buyers interested in equivalent properties to different neighborhoods or communities, or even different parts of the same development, according to the buyer's race or other characteristics protected under the Fair Housing Act. And then channeling, similarly, is the illegal practice of directing people to or away from certain areas or neighborhoods because of minority status.
And then blockbusting is a method of manipulating homeowners to sell or rent their homes at a lower price by that the neighborhood's socioeconomic demographic is changing because of new groups of people moving in, and that this will shift the effect of the value of their home. Predatory lending is imposing unfair, deceptive, or abusive loan terms on a borrower. So now we're up to date with historical racism in real estate. And we've established that clearly this is still very much an issue now today. We're going to talk about what's happening in the press, and I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to John to kick it off.
You're on mute, John.
I'm so sorry about that. Thank you guys for a really good setup and sharing some of the history with us. Now, what we're going to do for the next 15 minutes or so is discuss a recent article that was actually a 3-year-long investigation that was done by Newsday. You can search this online. You can see it for yourself. It's quite a long story. It has 13 parts, of which we are now going to go over each of those 13 parts by just giving you a brushstroke, and then we're going to open it up for a roundtable discussion right after that. So let's get started. Ellis, if you bring up the first slide. There we are. Thank you. Thanks so much. Okay, so there were 25 undercover testers that were trained. There were 93 real estate agents that were tested. There were 240 hours of meetings that were secretly recorded. There were 5,763 house listings that were analyzed. And there was a 3-year Newsday investigation that uncovered widespread evidence of unequal treatment by real estate agents on Long Island. And the result was 49% of the time, Blacks were discriminated against. Now we're going to go into this in greater detail. As I said, it's got 13 parts to the story. I'm going to talk about the first 4 parts. The first part is called, they call it steering. In this, what I'm going to do to give you sort of a breakdown of what the first part is all about is I'm going to read a series of quotes. These quotes, and by the way, Ellis, if you could mute everyone. Sorry, I'm hearing feedback in the background. I'm just going to give you a series of quotes now. And these quotes are from real estate brokers that were involved in this investigation. First one, follow the school bus, the agent said. See the moms that are hanging out on the corners. She said that to one of her clients. Some of them are not nice. This is a second quote. Elmont, most of Hempstead, Roosevelt, Baldwin, Freeport. You know, they may not be nice as far as terms and statistics go. Another one. I don't want to use the word steer, she said, but I try to, what's the word? Educate in the areas. Another quote, pointing out a need to study who lived in a community before buying, an agent advised the customer to observe nighttime patrons at the convenience stores. Another quote, there was one fellow who would, insisted on this house, and the wife was pregnant and had a little one. I said to him, I can't say anything, but what I can encourage you to do is to go at 10 o'clock at night with your wife to buy diapers to the local 7-Eleven. Then she goes on to say, they didn't buy there. She also counseled, what I say is always to women, follow the school bus. You know, that's what I always say. Follow the school bus to see who you find when the kids get out. Agents directed white buyers most heavily to areas with the highest white concentrations, while most often suggesting that Black buyers focus on areas with lower white representation. No surprise after hearing all those quotes. Part 2 is titled, The Perils of House Hunting While Black. The testing found that 49% of the time, the Black testers were receiving unequal treatment as opposed to their white testers. In 11 cases, agents directed Black testers to different neighborhoods than white testers in comparisons that showed evidence of steering. In 5 instances, agents imposed conditions on Black testers that amounted to the denial of equal service compared with the conditions requested of white testers. In 3 of the cases, agents either spoke about steering to the white testers, but not to the Black tester, or volunteered information about the ethnic makeup of the communities only to the white testers. Altogether, agents provided white testers with an average of 50% more listings than they gave to their Black counterparts, 39 compared with 26, including instances when agents provided no listings to one tester. So in essence, what happened here is that the Black testers had no idea that they were being directed toward different neighborhoods than their white counterparts. They gave them, the agents gave them fewer house listings overall. They put them under greater financial scrutiny, and they disparaged minority communities when speaking with the whites. The third part is titled Privileges While Hunting, Privileges of House Hunting While White. And in this one, Ellis, I'm gonna use the video. It sort of says it all. Again, the title here is Privileges of House Hunting While White, and we'll listen to a video.
Do you see a difference in how you were treated?
Oh, yes. And of course, I didn't know what she did with Johnny until later in time.
I was lied to, walked over, stopped.
So everything else being equal in terms of what we were looking for, I was given 10 different areas and towns as options, and he was giving 2.
I was shocked at how easy it was for me to go in and just sometimes immediately be shown houses.
She took me right away. Didn't make me wait even 5 minutes.
She told him, you don't have to worry too much about the test scores. They don't really matter too much. But to me, the test scores are extraordinarily important, is what she told me.
You know, you read about these things. You never think they would happen to you.
I don't think it's fair that he told me that these areas are bad, but he told her that these areas are okay.
I'm not surprised that she did it. I'm disheartened she did it. It makes me feel almost sick to my stomach that she did it.
My overall impression is that this is why we have to have laws, because there's no way I would know this was taking place if I was in Kelvin's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I have to say I concur with the gentleman who said it makes me sick to my stomach. I've watched that video now many times, and every single solitary time it makes me so emotional. I just have to say here, guys, it's mostly real estate brokers that are following us here on this series. We are the gatekeepers of these fair housing laws. It's us. We have a social responsibility. Not only that, a legal responsibility to follow these laws. And I just want to encourage people here, again, I know that you're here because you care enough, but we've got to spread the word within our communities, because this stuff that's going on is completely unacceptable. Those were testers. that were put into these situations, 15 people that were put into these situations in Long Island. This is our backyard. This is just something that happened very recently. That's proof that this racism crap in real estate is going on. And the proof is, of course, in the history that it's been going on for a very long time. So I move into my last part now, part 4, which is titled, They Looked Almost Everywhere Else. Agents avoided listings in many of Long Island's minority neighborhoods. Essentially what happened is that agents were suggesting areas like Bethpage, Comac, East Northport, Hauppauge to buyers a total of 80 times. That's averaging 135 listings each time. The communities range from 83 to 90% white, so no surprise there. In contrast, agents recommended Roosevelt, Uniondale, Hempstead, and Brentwood a total of 10 times, averaging 26 listings each time. These communities range from only 1 to 21% white. Now, channeling home buyers towards some towns and away from others can have economic consequences, as the practices naturally reduce demand in some places to the detriment of the homeowners there, while they're driving up the value in other areas to the benefit of the home areas of those agents who can reap larger commissions in sales. And this kind of goes back into what someone was saying earlier in the history. We have to understand the reason why there's such disparity between whites and blacks when it comes to finances, quite frankly, is buying a home in America is really the American dream. And when you don't have the opportunity to buy a home, when you finally do have the opportunity to buy the home after you've been redlined and discriminated against every corner you turn, what happens is the value of the real estate that you buy in your area goes down because other people, agents, who are steering people away from those communities and bringing them to the neighboring towns is increasing the value of those neighboring towns, decreasing the value of the investment that the black person has in their neighborhoods. Well, what happens 30 years down the line after your 30-year fixed mortgage is done? That's your nest egg. People rely on that, and they don't have that money to retire. And that's what creates such disparity in wealth between white people and black people. And again, it begins with us, the gatekeepers. So I beg you, I plead you to please be aware of the power that we have to do beautiful things. And I know that many of you are aware of it, but I want you to remind your fellow colleagues. So I could go on, but I won't, because I'm gonna let Stephen now talk about point number 5. Stephen, take it away.
Thanks a lot, John. I'm going to be rather brief just because I want to be cognizant of time and get to you, the audience. So part 5 refers to the Hispanic experience of the Newsday study. There were 5 Hispanic testers who went undercover for Newsday's investigation. Using aliases with Hispanic surnames, they were looking for houses priced in the $400K to $3 million range. They were provided 12% fewer listings in white buyers in those tests, and the gap was larger in overwhelmingly white communities. There, the agents gave white testers 7 times more homes to consider than they were provided to matching Hispanic home buyers. All told, 5 Hispanic testers met the evidence of disparate treatment at 39% of the time. On to point 5, the Asian experience. Asian would-be homebuyers participated in 16 tests that measured service agents, gave to them against how many agents helped comparable homebuyers. So they were looking in the 400,000 range in Bayshore to West Islip area to 7 million on the North Shore of the Gold Coast on Long Island. In all but 3, agents provided comparable service to Asian and white households. The 3 exceptions included evidence that 1 agent denied equal service to an Asian tester with his white counterpart, and that 2 agents provided greater information about communities to white testers, even as the agents disparaged those areas. None of the tests matching Asian and white buyers showed evidence that agents had steered house hunters to different communities. At 3 out of the 16 tests, the Asian individuals experienced evidence suggesting discrimination 19% of the time. To put that in context, we're talking about 30% of the time for Black purchasers and 39% for Hispanic. Part 7 would be the top choice for Hispanics. Hispanics were overwhelmingly steered to the community of Huntington, Long Island. And to kind of end this, I'm just going to read off a quote from an agent who allegedly made the following statement. "But you don't want to go there. It's a mixed neighborhood." When the buyer asked what that meant, the agent allegedly said, "You have commercial, you have residential, you have white, you have Black, you have Latino, you have Indians, you have Chinese, you have Koreans. It's a mini. From here, we're going to go on to Charlie to pick things up.
Thank you, Stephen. So we're going to continue deeper into Long Island, where several agents rarely recommended the towns of Merrick, Rockville Center, and Levittown. Now you may remember Levittown, we spoke of it before, as the FHA federally funded neighborhood built in 1947, as stated in their titles and their deeds that the house could not be occupied by any other person than the Caucasian race. The makeup of these communities now range from 75% white to 88% white. Real estate agents overwhelmingly chose these areas for their white customers, but not for their matching paired minority home seekers. The agents' choices matched the demographics of the town. Tested agents gave their white customers 13 times more listings in these 3 communities than they provided to their minority buyers. 2 suggested homes there only to their white customers. Now we're going to go over to point 9. Challenge to rooting out discrimination is money. The money dedicated to government to search out these types of discrimination has been quite minimal. In 2016, Cuomo made a declaration: we're going to investigate it, we're going to find it, we're going to ferret it out, we're going to punish it, and we're going to prosecute it because it is illegal. Cuomo spent $66,000, conducted 88 tests, but unfortunately since then hasn't allocated any funds. During that time, there were fines that were placed against landlords refusing to rent to Black tenants. So on paper, real estate agents are subject to investigation and discipline by multiple levels of government. But at each rung of the enforcement ladder, the agencies lack the capacity to use this primary tool, which is money allocated toward these programs for uncovering fair housing law violations by these real estate agents. Part 10 is the segregation of Blacks and whites. And been built into the deep history of Long Island, and it is as visible as the Meadowbrook Park. 6 lanes of highway and a swatch of trees separate these neighborhoods. You can see on one side is 24% white and the other is 8%. Some of this is also invisible byproducts of historical forces, including zoning regulations, mortgage redlining, which we spoke about, the boundaries of school districts, housing prices, steering, block shifting. One Long Island community, of all the 291 communities, most of its Black residents only live in 11. It's one of the most segregated suburbs in America. So when you see these hard differential walls, visible and invisible, underlying, there's usually bigotry and prejudice at maintaining these hard walls. I'm gonna go on and pass this to Nadia.
You're on mute, Nadia.
Okay, sorry about that. So let me talk about using schools as a selling point. In Long Island, there's 124 school districts for 438,000 students, each district having their own budget and resources. So let's compare that to New York City that has 1 school district on 1 budget for 1.1 million students. In Long Island, real estate agents sell schools as much as they sell houses. In the study, agents applied a laser-like focus on districts, highlighting their perceived quality when recommending places that house hunters should consider buying or avoid. The danger of this is that in the last 10 to 15 years, schools have been a proxy for race and a gateway to have a coded discussion on the exact topic that you're told to avoid, that topic being race. Just to give a personal synopsis, I was a Westchester agent for some time. In New Rochelle, there's 2 high schools, and home values have historically been tied directly to these schools. It's night and day. The gym class curriculum alone, where one has a gym class of kayaking, fencing, and lacrosse, and the other one has no such funding for these activities, maybe a basketball team, but has a higher team. So it's no surprise which one has the lesser value homes and which one has a higher percentage. So the question is, since when does real estate agents become experts on schools? We should not be trusted to provide objective information about schools and schools' performance rates. Now, inside the agent training in Long Island, that's number 12 in the Newsday article, across the board, I would just say that continuing education, we as real estate agents, we put it off to know. and we procrastinate until the bitter last minute until we have to fill this need. State required continuing education classes in real estate law and practices are supposed to cover fair housing regulations and how it can deliberately or unintentionally discriminate. Instead, in this study, 5 out of 6 classes attended by Newsday reporters, instructors provided very thinly veiled, incomplete or misleading information. One instructor likened fair housing laws to speed limits faced by a cab driver rushing a customer to telling students, you get to choose whether you break the law. For my fellow agents on this, we don't get to do that. This license that we possess reflects our livelihood and the ability to live life on our own terms. So please let's make sure that we don't view things as because I truly believe that revocation and suspension will be the route over a fine, because they're looking to make an example out of one of us. Now, just to go back on what John pointed of how this whole study was done, to wrap it up, 240 hours of video, 15-month time frame, and a total of 109 tests. The collective findings of this investigation form a body of evidence suggesting practices by agents in Long Island home sales. Additionally, some transactions reveal the hidden disparities experienced by minority house hunters without their ever knowing that they have been disadvantaged. So to conclude, on Monday, New York State has announced new regulations to combat this problem. Prompted by this, Governor Cuomo signed the legislation Monday, empowering the Department of State to take action against discriminatory practices. The state Senate had approved the bill 59-1 in July, with voting against the measure. So to quote our governor, housing discrimination is completely unacceptable, and it's also against the law. These new regulations and protocols will help ensure anyone looking to rent or buy a home knows their rights so they don't fall prey to unscrupulous real estate brokers. So I end this with saying, let's all do our part so that our industry of real estate is no longer nicknamed racism zero. Take it back of the audience.
Thank you, guys. So we're now going to switch. So just to make that point, Nadia, if we do not abide by these laws as real estate brokers, we can have our licenses revoked. And I can guarantee you that that's going to start happening, because we know from this past 15 minutes, that's already going on in our industry. We're now going to move this part of our conversation. Anybody has anything to share, whether it be a personal experience of racism in real estate, or whether it be a response to anything we've talked about in today's session, please raise your hand on the upper right-hand corner of the Zoom screen, hit the 3 dots, raise your hand. Ellis will then acknowledge you, and he'll let you know that you are next up to speak. Everybody will have 2 minutes on the floor, and then we'll stop if you go over your 2 minutes, so we can give the next person an opportunity to speak. So, Ellis, if anybody raised their hand yet?
Lois, Penny, are you out there? Lois.
Okay, while we're waiting for
Adrian, how are you?
Hi everyone. Can you hear me, Ellis?
We hear you.
Okay, great. I just wanted to quickly touch on something. I just put a Black family out in Valley Stream. I did find the same issues when I was looking out there with them. When I took them to a listing in Rockville Center, I know for a fact the only reason why I got the appointment was because I made it with another Douglas Elliman agent. When I was contacting other agents, they really didn't want to show me the houses. All of a sudden, they weren't available. And then you always get the whole, tell me about your client thing. And I say, listen, my clients are, a teacher and a marketing exec. I have their pre-approved approval from Wells Fargo. We're ready to go. And like, no, I mean, you know, like, tell me. I'm like, what are you asking? Like, well, I mean, you know, are they black, white? I'm like, you can't ask that. But, you know, they do it. And so I definitely can echo the sentiments that unfortunately some of our industry colleagues have been just as committed to racial steering and segregation as, you know, the homeowners are. But I also wanted to quickly touch on gentrification. Out here in Brooklyn, I live in Crown Heights. So in Bed-Stuy and Crown Heights specifically, they've just been ravaged by it. And it's really this notion that, you know, the homes are not valuable as long as Black bodies are occupying them. And it's the same home, same amount of bedrooms, same amount of bathroom, finishes, everything. But what makes the home less than is that it's occupied by Black bodies. And in order for the neighborhood to be, and again, our industry colleagues, you know, we have to watch our own language. And you see a listing and they say things like, oh, it's up and coming, it's a new neighborhood. That what that really means is a dog whistle, is that Black people are being relocated and white people are moving in. And unfortunately, that ends up being real money that Blacks are losing to hundreds of thousands of dollars. We talked about Black homes being devalued. I had a client I had to fire, and there was a brownstone he wanted. The listing was maybe 1.5, 1.6, and you know, instead of coming in 1.375, 1.4, and we can, you know, there's room to negotiate. He wants me to use me as a buffer because I'm Black, to try to convince the family to just take $900,000. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars, real money, as John pointed out. Like, you know, that's their safety net, their retirement. That's money they can't pass to their descendants. That's money they can't borrow against to start a business. So when you look at real estate supposedly being the wealth generator that it's supposed to be, and all of a sudden now, if a Black person has overcome hurdles by just buying, now you're telling them it's still not approved. You know, they're still not worth anything, even if they do own it. So I just want to talk about that.
All right. We appreciate that, Adrian, and we're going to go. Alice is going to take us to our next speaker now. Sorry, guys, we're just going to stick to the 2 minutes because we want to get as many folks in as humanly possible.
Hey guys, just before we go to the next person, I have to have everybody as panelists. If you go into the chat and you see, open up the participants, you see the raised hand. The raised hand often isn't moved. It's just, I'm addressing some of that in the chat. But that's where the raise hand button is. Okay? Go ahead.
Louis Brown, are you out there?
Yes, I am. Hello?
Hey, Louis.
You're there, Louis.
I'm sorry I'm muted here. I have my 10-year-old with me here, so I don't want to show all that.
All right, 2 minutes.
Okay, so I've only been in real estate a little over a year, and I've experienced quite a bit of this in New York City, and also been challenged by it by various clients, and also some agents out in Long Island telling me that it's all nonsense. And I'm just trying to develop the proper language and how to deal with this, because I was actually shocked. Some of the things I heard, especially by opposing brokers regarding this type of discrimination. I was told numerous times, if I don't bring certain people to certain areas and do this, that I'll never be able to succeed in real estate because everybody does this. And I would never, ever even think of doing anything that they were suggesting. So one of the items happened from a colleague of mine at my brokerage, and she's selling a place out in Long Island, and the seller's broker, the buyer's broker for her said, "Don't buy there, the school's really bad." And then she was screamed at and said, "Why didn't you tell me that? You're a bad broker for not telling me the school is bad." And I'm hearing these things over and over again, and I'm sorry for being emotional about it, but I'm trying to field these things, really do my best to represent my buyers or my sellers, whatever it might be. But I'm seeing this kind of discrimination, and also a failure to neglect certain people in certain markets, especially in areas in Long Island, Merrick, and Freeport, as you've mentioned as well. I see a lot of it happening there. But also in the city here, one example from me was I was representing a buyer, and the opposing broker said, "Oh, don't worry about the NYCHA housing and the Black people. It's safe here." And they said that to my buyer. And I was shocked. And afterwards, the buyer said, "Are they supposed to be talking about that?" And I said, "No, but what did you think of the apartment?" I was
2 minutes.
Focused. The other thing I wanted to mention real quick was a company called Localize, which seems to be advertising things like talking about crime and schools and things like this, and making it seem like me as an agent are hiding essential facts from people by not telling them what they call is the truth. So those are my comments. So I'm sorry for speaking so fast. I know I only had 2 minutes, so there I am.
Right.
Thank you very much for your
appreciate
comments.
it.
We're very happy that you shared
Thank
them.
Hi.
Thank you.
There
Next
I am in
we'll go
person.
to, Margula, are you out there?
Margula, you're on mute.
Okay, do you hear me?
We hear you.
Okay, great. So I'm going to just say that something has been bothering me. I was on your roundtable discussion last week. I was going to say something, but I didn't. But now that the young lady mentioned something about Crown Heights, there's something I think I need to put out to everybody. I experienced what you may call reverse discrimination. I mean, I'm just making that up. I don't know if that's a technical term. John, in my neighborhood in Crown Heights, most of the homeowners are Black. So they do not want to sell to me as a white person. When I go to them and approach the Black homeowners, they don't want to sell. I've had in my face, people will tell me, I don't care, I don't want to sell, I want to, I'd rather not sell, I want to die, whatever. They would say things very racist to me.
Margula, are these homes listed?
No. No,
Okay.
what I'm referring to is prospecting. When I prospect as an agent in Crown Heights to homes from my buyers. And I experienced reverse discrimination when a Black homeowner will specifically tell me in my face, I don't want to deal with you. And that is one specific homeowner gave it to a Black broker. Fine, he went and he listed it. I called him up, and even though I was prospecting that particular property for about a year, the homeowner did not want to deal with me. No problem, it's a free country. She can deal with whoever she wants. Gave it to a Black broker. He put his sign on the front yard. I called him up. How much is it? 1.6. He said very clearly, the seller wants 1.65, excuse me. And I said, okay, I have a buyer. And the Black broker said to me, is it okay that I'm saying Black broker, like, can I speak like this?
Yes, of course.
Go
yes.
on.
I don't want to, okay. So the Black broker said to me, very quickly, I'll try to speak very quickly. So the Black broker said to me, he heard my voice. He didn't see me. Doesn't know who I am. Heard my voice. He said, I'm sorry, I don't co-broke with white brokers. With your people. I said, what do you mean? He says, you're a white broker. I don't want to co-broke with you. And he said, because you brokers never co-broke with me. I said, excuse me, sir. Apparently, we never had the pleasure of meeting. I co-broke with everybody and anybody. I have a vetted buyer for this property. I have a 165 offer. He
Margula,
says,
I don't want to cut you off, but I would say,
you got the point.
But what I would say is that both Crown Heights and Bed-Stuy, they do have an active board of real estate there to protect homeowners from, a lot of people do show up to their doors and try to have deed fraud or take their homes from them. So maybe being an active participant in that, they may need a voice of a different, of a different race. So, but thank you.
May I finish the story? I'll tell you what happened, Nadia, very quickly. So at the end of the story was that he didn't want to take my offer. And he told me, this Black broker told me in my face, I am not co-broking. I will not take your offer. I said, so are you going to let your seller, whom he has a fiduciary responsibility to, the Black seller, will you let her know what the offer is? He said, no. My highest is 1.5. I'm going to give her my offer. I will not take your 165 offer. So in essence, Nadia, that Black homeowner was, as for no better term, cutting her nose to spite her face. There was $150,000 on the table because her Black broker didn't want to deal with me, a white broker.
Okay.
What I will say to that is racism of any kind is unacceptable to us, but thank you for sharing your story. We're going to move on to the next person, just to give everyone a fair shot.
Nate, are you out there?
Sanya Waldron.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear
Hi
me?
there.
Yes. All right.
Hi,
2 minutes.
hi. How are you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we
Hi.
got
I just have a question for. I have a question for wonderful John Gomes. You are an expert in both Manhattan Metro and also in suburbia in many markets. What is your personal experience when you have a qualified buyer and they want to go from the city to the suburbs with everything going on? Have you experienced, how do you navigate and steer away from that energy of, I really don't want it to be XYZ kind of people here? What do you do in your expertise and as a minority in this industry? What would you advise in those situations?
Well, regardless of my racial status, as a real estate broker, I don't steer anybody anywhere. All options are always on the table to me. I never consider what the makeup of any particular neighborhood is. I never think about any of that. That's just, it doesn't come into my purview.
I'm sorry. I mean, when they ask you, when they start saying funny things to you, what do you do with your moral ethics to steer them back on track?
I mean, look,
that's what I meant to say.
I have a backbone and I stand straight and I tell it to them straight. I'm very, very straightforward. I'm very fortunate that I'm in a place in my career where I can be myself. I live my life out loud. I'm very professional. I'm knowledgeable. I'm skillful, and I'm honest. And I do the right thing, most importantly. So I always do the right thing. And that includes sometimes telling people what I think when they're inappropriate. I'm not afraid to call any buyer out. I'm not afraid to call out a seller. I'm not afraid to lose a commission. I'd actually rather lose a commission to an ignorant person who makes such remarks, because they're not, it's dirty money that I don't want. So.
Right. That's right. Thank you as a leader for making that, for leading us in that direction as this broker is coming up.
Thank you for your comment. We'll move to the next one because we're over 2 minutes. Who do we have here?
Ellis, you're on mute.
Because I bought some.
Is that, who's up here? Is that Felicia? Felicia, you got the floor. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. As they say, bye, Felicia. Ellis, who's up next?
Hi, and bye.
Is that you, Felicia?
This is Felicia. Yeah.
Oh, hi, Felicia.
How are you?
We're so good. Felicia, did you have something to share?
You know, not at this moment. I don't have it well documented, but I've been trying to find a lease for one of my clients for a year. And I believe I've faced some of the problems that some of the speakers have presented, in that they don't want to rent to Black people. And some of these properties have been owned by minority realtors also. This is California I'm calling from.
Got it, okay. So yeah, I think sometimes people forget, because we're located here in New York, this is a national discussion, and we have people from both coasts and in between that are partaking in this discussion. So thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, apparently this racism is happening all over the country.
You know, guys, just to kind of jump in here, I think maybe let's switch gears in the 11 minutes that we have left and talk about some professional experiences. If you look at the top brokers, whether Real Trends, Wall Street Journal, you typically don't see Black agents ranked at the top of these rankings. I think a lot of the historical iniquity, if you will, kind of contributes to that, also paired with the income structure of, you know, some folks might not have the savings in order to succeed at first to become a top agent. I know for me, 10 years in the business, I literally moved to New York. I think I had $1,000 in my pocket. This was 2010. And I started in rentals, and it was sink or swim. And quite frankly, there were a few times where I felt where I might need to move back home with my parents in California if I didn't make it. I kind of wanted to get some of the panelists and the guest thoughts on the professional side of things.
I mean, I think just to piggyback off you, Stephen, I think the reality is that when people think, you know, luxury real estate or even new development, we've had this discussion several times, they don't think a Black agent. I've walked into, you know, multiple rooms, multiple launch parties, and I'm not even seen as an agent to people. I will say, you know, thank you. I just have to give a shout out to John, Julia, Fred, Susie, you know, Ellis, just for really giving me an opportunity, because how people view me now is a little bit different. And that is in part thanks to the brand. But also too, just kind of taking me under their wing and just kind of like showing me the ropes. It's exposed me to a lot more. But yes, when we walk into these rooms, we're not seen, and people really they don't see us as top luxury agents, not until somebody else vouches for us, and somebody that's not Black, essentially. If I'm just keeping it real. You know, like,
I want everyone to jump in, but let me just give a quick anecdote. I mean, I thought it was kind of funny at the time. I think this was 5-6 years ago. I had a listing in a building on Central Park West where Mariah Carey was actually turned down by the board famously. And I was showing it. It was a $5.5 million listing. And I remember the buyer came in and looked at me up and down and said, "This is your listing?" ? And I thought, okay, this could mean one of a few things. I've always looked pretty young. I'm 33 years old. I'm a non-white agent in a primarily dominant white space on Central Park West. I know this might raise a few areas of suspicion. I mean, I didn't give it too much meaning at the time, but looking back, I thought it was a little bit funny, and I kind of questioned, okay, would another agent be questioned in that manner?
Yeah, I want to say a couple of things. Number one, about the top 75 brokers. Yes, it's true. I was recently called by a reporter from a big national newspaper asking me if there were any other agents that I could think of that were on that top 75 list. And I said, no, and unfortunately, and she referred to me as a Black agent. I said, my father is Black, but my mother is white. So technically I am biracial. Now I want to say that the only reason that me as a biracial man is able to, you know, move to the top of the heap in real estate in New York City, quite frankly, is because my business partner is white. I don't think I could have done it without him. You know, he's tall, 6'4", handsome, light color hair, blue eyes, and white skin. And I was able to get as far as I've been able to get in this industry because we were together all along. But I honestly question if I were able to get to where I am today if it were not for him. Secondly, I want to say, as a follow-up to you, Janet, when Frederick and I decided to expand into these multiple cities and to have almost now 80+ agents on our team, Julia, Frederick, and I sat down and we carefully thought, we have a platform. We must be selective in the way that we choose our agents, and we have to open the door and give opportunities to Black agents because no one else will if we don't. And by the way, look at you guys. I get so emotional when I hear you speak, and you're so professional. I know how nice you guys are. I know how knowledgeable you all are. I love you so much. You have such warm, beautiful hearts. And all we want to do is put you out there so that you can be the faces that other agents who may happen to be Black, who are graduating from high school or in college programs, and say, look at her, look at him. They're on a top team in real estate. If they can do it, I can do it. And that's why we made that choice. And I have to tell you, I am so thankful for the choice that we made. And I'm so grateful to have you guys on this team with us. And I'm so hopeful that we will have more successful Black people who are working within our industry, because that is what we're all trying to do. And I would be surprised if one of you all were not on the top 75 list soon enough. And by the way, I hope so. Is there anybody out there that
I can jump in real quickly. I just wanted to piggyback on what Janet was saying about not being seen. I know sometimes if I've been prospecting with like FSBOs, or even if it's a referral and I'm on the phone with someone and I can tell like maybe they haven't Googled me, they don't know what I look like. But when I show up to the house, I cannot tell you on how many times I've gotten this reaction. Where they open the door and they're like, you know, and I can tell that they did not think that the person they were talking to on the phone was this little Black woman that showed up. And they have this moment where they kind of, and then as I'm talking, you know, we're going through the presentation, whatever, I always get this thing, and it's that backhanded compliment where they say, oh, you're so articulate, or oh, you're so professional. And I'm kind of like, why wouldn't I be? Like, this is so, like,
how many times, Adrienne?
yeah, you understand what I'm saying. And it's just this notion of, you know, like Janet's point, like, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not as knowledgeable. I can't get the work done for you because you have a perception of what, you know, a Black agent or just the fact that I'm just not capable of doing it. And it's always kind of like they're like pleasantly surprised to find out that they're wrong. And I love proving people wrong. I love it. But it is an extra hurdle, and it's just kind of disheartening. But like I said, I can't tell you how many times that's happened to me.
So Adrienne, to follow up on that, on another side of things, right? I've been in situations where, you know, I've been in front of top women agents, white, and basically the trope or the stereotype is, well, if this doesn't work out for you, you know, you're very beautiful, you could become a model. And it's like,
oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
And this just happened last year, and I'm talking like a top agent that I actually like admired, you know, and I was like, you know, this woman's doing her thing. And the only thing I could do was literally just give her just a, and I'm like,
you know, and I see, you know, Janet, I see people like I'm not gonna say this, you know, we have people in the comments saying like, you know, just the thing of you speak so well. When you say it to me, I don't know if would they say that to Susie? Would they say that to Ellis, right? And then when it comes to us, has nothing to do with real estate, but when it comes to the women, it's always about how beautiful we are and how exotic we look. And for the men, it's always how strong they are. So our little boys and our little girls, it's always, you're so pretty, you could be a model. And for our little boys, it's, oh, he's growing so strong, he could be an athlete. Why can't he be a doctor? Why can't she be a scientist? Why do, you know, so it's all of these things that we've been tackling for the weeks coming up. And we don't want anybody to just comment based on preaching to the choir. We want to be able to dismantle a lot of things that people are saying. So please, you know, we encourage you to keep coming and keep participating. That's all I have to say.
Guys, in the few minutes that we have left, I wanted to just quickly toss something out here since it hasn't really come up, particularly for our New York City folks. Has anyone had a suspicion of any type of discrimination that might have been experienced by their buyers in terms of a co-op board? The very interesting thing about co-op boards is they technically don't have to let you know a reason as to why the applicant was rejected. So I suppose you can only really go off of speculation, but I was just wondering if anyone had any thoughts there.
Stephen, can I just answer that first? Can I just answer that first? Before you answer that, Nadia, I just want to say, you know, you have to consider the fact that many Black people don't even apply for a co-op because they're already uncomfortable with that notion. And there might be a co-op in neighborhoods that might be more predominantly Black, by the way, but certainly there are many neighborhoods, and you know those traditional neighborhoods where all the co-ops are in Manhattan, you just don't have. And I've worked with Black buyers in the past, and they always say, I'm looking for a condo, I'm looking for a condo, I'm looking for a condo. And in the back of my mind, I always think to myself, I wonder if they're looking for a condo because they are afraid to apply for a co-op. So I just want to put that out there. Nadia?
You're absolutely correct. Absolutely.
I think also it's like to say this, John, it's like the good old boys network and a lot of these co-ops, you know. A couple of points I just want to make. I've been in the business for 16 years. And when I first got into the business, an agent said to me, and not even just meeting the first week, I think a good place for you to start is in Harlem. And I kind of looked at her and I said, okay, thanks a lot. I appreciate that. So in terms of the agents out there, even at Douglas Elliman, sometimes there's a perception that they have by just looking at us. They're just kind of pigeonholing us into certain areas, which is absolutely crazy. But that's my little just 2 cents.
I hear you. I hear you, and I hear it all the time.
Just to give 15 seconds, yes, my current best friend started off as my client. He was young, he was single, he made $180,000 a year. He was trying to buy a co-op in Yonkers for $165,000. He had about $80,000 in savings, but he was Black. And I think, you know, between being Black and gay, they told him no. Didn't give us a reason, but there was no, I've sold in that same co-op complex before, and everybody else that was not Black and gay, they got approved with less finances than he did. So.
Wow.
All right.
Yeah, John, I just wanted to just really quick say you're absolutely right. I don't even sometimes like to take my Black clients to co-ops because I don't want to have to deal with explaining to them whatever nonsensical reason a co-op's going to give when we all know what it really is. So I would just tell them, if you have your approval, go and get these 4 walls that you will own in this condo. And that may be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong for doing it as an agent, but I don't want to have to explain that to them. And I think now New York is kind of pushing back on that, where the co-ops might actually get in trouble for doing that. But, you know, they know how to not be. They could be more covertly racist. They're not so overt about it. But I know a Black trader that didn't get into a co-op, and they said it was because she was single and didn't have any ties to New York City because she didn't have a family.
All the time.
It's ridiculous.
It happens all the time, and it's a shame. I hate to cut you off, but we are at the end. It is 3:30. We will be back at 2:30, same time, same station next week. And next week, we're going to talk about the solution. We're going to come up with some answers, and we really need you to participate next week, because now we've well identified that there's a problem and there is racism in real estate. Where do we go from here? We've got to do something about it. And one thing I want to tell you is that this 1 hour has inspired me to think about this. I am going to sponsor a hotline. And I'm going to give anybody on this, any real estate broker in all of New York City, a phone number where they can call, and they will call that hotline and they can report anything that they see out there, whether it be a broker that they see making a racist remark, whether it be a broker that's steering, whether it be anybody or anything that's related to racism in real estate. And we are going to tackle that. We're going to put together a committee, and we're going to talk about it, and we're going to eventually report it. So I just want to say that that's a preliminary thought that I have. Thank you, everybody, for participating. I love you guys so much. We'll look forward to seeing you next week. Same time, same station, 2:30. Bye.
Thank you. Bravo.
Thank you.